As I said, welcome everybody and good morning to everybody. This is the second in a series of webinars that we're doing about helping people through their transformation journey. The first webinar we did, a couple of months now, was all focused on how we start, how people start their digital transformation journey. And today we're going to be focusing on establishing high-performing teams. Just before I introduce myself and the rest of the panelists today, just going to just go through some housekeeping and let you know how the session's going to run. So as I said, this second webinar is all about how we're going to focus on establishing high-performing teams, which is vital to successful transformation. All participants will be muted throughout the session, but please, we really want you to engage with the session today. So you can submit your questions through the Q&A tab, which hopefully you can all see. And then what we'll do is we'll run through the content and the discussion that we're going to have today. And then we'll come back at the end of the session to go through any questions. We'll try and keep this to around 45 minutes to ensure that we can leave time for questions. But obviously, if we do run out of time, we will find a route to be able to respond back to any questions remotely afterwards. As I said, this is part of a series of webinars that we've been doing to help people through their digital transformation. And just a reminder that anybody that's joining us today, by attending today's session, you can also take advantage of a complimentary Kickstart transformation workshop that we want to do with people. Obviously, as I said, by you joining here, more information will come out about how you can sign up for one of those more dedicated workshops that we can run with you and your teams. So without further ado, let me introduce myself and the panelists we've got today. So hi, I'm Sarah Brewer. I am Global Head of Customer Partnerships here at RM. I'm delighted to be with you today. So a little bit about me. I've got over 20 years of business change leadership with the likes of Serco and Capita, where I've spent predominantly most of my career. More recently, I have moved into assessment delivery transformations and been focusing on those in around the last 4 years. Also with us today, we've got Andrea Smith. Andrea is a program director here at RM. She has over 15 years worth of strategic program director experience, focusing on delivering complex transformations into public and private sector. Welcome, Andrea. We've also got Graham Bateman, who's from our partner company, Searchlight. Graham is a transformation director, over 28 years of global experience from all different types of transformation programs, and we're really looking forward to getting Graham's insight as we go through the discussion today. And finally, and importantly, I'm really pleased to welcome Matt Perry with us today. Matt is the founder of Transition 15. He's an ex-England Barbarians and Lions Rugby player who's now turned those skills from on the pitch into becoming an executive coach. And the reason we've got him with him today is because he provides expertise and insights specifically into high-performing environments and growing teams in that space. So we're really looking forward to getting his insight into the discussion today. All of the team will obviously introduce themselves as we go through the session. So let me move us through to the discussion that we want to kick off today. So as I mentioned in the last webinar, and I appreciate some of you might not have been on the last webinar, but we really focused about how you go on starting your transformation journey. We wanted to obviously kick off with an element of that today by looking at how awarding bodies and organisations start that digital journey, but now more importantly, focusing on the things that you need to consider, focused on the topic that we want to discuss today around high performing teams. So I'm going to open this discussion up to Graham to kick us off, please.
Sure, right. So question, when an awarding body or organisation starts its digital journey, what are the key things to consider to establish high performing teams? So there's a number of elements on the screen in front of you which we'll talk to, but it essentially the foundational elements that we recommend our clients consider are really based around performance enablement, which is all about providing your team with the right resources, the right environment, the right tools and the support structure they need to deliver really well, consistently throughout your journey, and of course collaboratively. So the other points on here all build on that performance enablement. a clear vision and purpose. So if any of you on the call today did attend our first webinar, we spent quite a bit of time talking about focusing on the why. Why are you doing this thing? Why are you undertaking this digital transformation journey? It's really important that the team are very clear on the why. Are they clear on what your end goals are, on your vision? And how does it link to your wider business objectives? More than often, it's not just a technical upgrade that you're doing. It links to wider business objectives. And it's really important the entire team understand that and how they can play the part in delivering that as a team. Governance and role clarity, for anybody that lives in the world of program or project management, which I've based a lot of my career on, you'll be familiar with this, but it is so important to make sure people are clear on roles. I spend a lot of time when kicking these things off, making sure we have clear role descriptions. I communicate them with the team, and we really want feedback. Make sure you agree them with the team, because the number of times I've met with individuals and their idea of what they're responsible for and what they're being asked to do as part of the team differs from that perhaps others think they're doing. So get those role descriptions communicated, agree them, develop a simple but clear RACI and share it with people, and try and foster within your team, try and foster accountability and responsibility. Delivering as a team is about shared ownership. Each individual brings their own strengths and often balances other weaknesses elsewhere in the team. So it's really important that people take responsibility for the areas that they need to deliver as part of the whole. And the thing that brings it all together, again, in the sort of project and program management space, is the governance. So it's the common processes that you all follow every day, very clear, well-articulated decision-making processes. So who can make decisions? How do we make decisions? How do we record those decisions? What is our reporting cadence? How do we communicate with one another? And meetings. And we talk a lot about meetings these days, because in many programs that I'm a part of, it seems like you're always in meetings. And the quote that resonates with me is, it's one of the only sort of industry areas where you spend 75% of your time in meetings trying to deliver 100% of the work. And as leaders, we've got to keep an eye on that and make sure we have just the right number of meetings to share information, to communicate, but allow the team to actually get on and do the work. So that's governance and role clarity. Psychological safety and trust. This is really all about ensuring that everybody has a voice, and that voice is respected. So as leaders, as managers, we need to foster an environment where people can feel comfortable. They can express their own views and their opinions, and that we can agree or disagree agreeably, without berating people and vilifying people. I've shared with a number of the panelists on the call today, when I started my journey, my career in the mid-90s, some of the management styles, I'm glad to say, have faded away, but there was a lot of what I describe as a toxic culture, and it really didn't motivate teams. I'm pleased to say that is something I don't see very much these days. But yeah, allow the team to talk, to voice opinions. It doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't have direct and frank conversations with one another. Of course we do. That's the nature of things. But avoid at all costs degradation and vilification. You don't want a toxic culture. It never leads to productivity and to good outcomes. And then the last point here talks to effective communication and that collaboration. So we've touched on some of this already. So making sure everyone's clear on the vision, the why, the goals, what their roles are, the objectives, status updates. How are we going as a whole? Sometimes people get siloed and focus in the areas that they're working in. It's important that everybody understands where we are as a whole, what has worked, what hasn't worked. The term fail fast is bandied around a lot these days. I actually quite like it. We don't want too much failure, clearly, but if mistakes are made, pause, reflect, readjust, adjust your course, and change direction. But again, trying to do that without berating the team, encourage them. That's part of our role as leaders, and part of my role certainly is to coach people, and try and help them through challenging times. And the last point, and probably, you know, the most important amongst really important things for me, is celebrate success. Too often in these things, we only celebrate at key milestones, at a go live date, when people have done months, if not years of work. So definitely ensure that we celebrate success with the team, and don't overlook that. So for me, they're the foundational elements that we talk about all the time, with clients, in any digital business transformation.
Thanks, Graham. And I think the only additional context I'd add to that, particularly thinking about the people that will probably be joining this webinar and or listening back to this, is I think it's also really important when we're thinking about establishing high-performing teams. Most organisations won't be doing this alone. They'll be doing it with partners, they'll be doing it with suppliers. It's really important that these key metrics we're talking about here flow down through the whole of the ecosystem of who's going to be engaged with working on this transformation. That there are the guardrails, that some of the guardrails that Graham's talked about. Particularly, it's easy to focus on governance, but bringing in that level of psychological safety and trust, that's done throughout the whole of the ecosystem. So we build the right processes and engagement routes to be able, so everybody has got a voice and feels so that they can feel that they have got a part to play, so it more effectively gels the teams together to get the right successful outcomes. And I think it's really important when people go down this journey, they don't just think of their inward organisation, they think of all parts that are going to be playing into that transformation journey. Okay, let's move on. So importantly, and leading on from that, and some of the things that Graham's just talked about, there will be key themes that you'll see throughout the discussion that we go through today. But focusing now on communication, how do organisations go around communicating clear vision and purpose? And I'm going to hand over to Andrea to take us through this.
Thanks, Sarah. I think firstly, can I say it's really great and refreshing to be on a webinar that is focused on the development of people, and to be here sat in a virtual room with leaders who have got a real pedigree in delivering lasting change through the empowerment of people is a real privilege. So thanks for having me. We could definitely linger on each of these questions and topics for at least an hour because there's so much to unpack. So I think these sessions we've talked about as the follow-up that are available are going to be a great opportunity for anyone here or listening later to take a deeper dive into the priorities that their organisations might have based upon what you've heard previously now and in the third part of the three-part series. But to answer the question about how about communicating a clear vision and purpose, you know, that through the lens of fostering a high-performing team, I think we have to combine clarity, context, and connection that ensures that every team member really understands not just the what and the when that can often take precedence when communications are formatted and disseminated, but to remain focused on the why and the how. I think Graham talked earlier about, you know, the first episode in this series was about how do you create that why, and then it can be very quickly forgotten in how we interact and communicate with our teams. So I think, you know, thinking about a couple of recommendations that I'd make, and then I know Matt's also got thoughts on this and I'll hand over to him for his perspective. As part of your communications plan, it is really important to continue to anchor everything consistently in that clear and compelling vision of the why, something that really articulates the purposefulness of what's intended and resonates with the people who are going to be part of the delivery team. You know, really framing that vision around the impact that their individual contributions and work will make to the broader organisation, and in often cases, particularly within education, societal goals. You know, I'm a real believer that for the most part, everybody in whatever line of work they're in, going to work every day, just hoping to make a difference. And digital transformation is an area where if a team is motivated in the right way through that communication, a real difference can be made at real pace. So harnessing, I think, the power of that very human need to do good is really vital. There's lots of tools out there and effective ways of doing this. And I personally find that storytelling in your communication both in terms of origin stories, examples of where similar challenges have been undertaken and overcome to succeed. That's really important, that makes sure that communication remains not only anchored to vision and strategy, but remains authentic, doesn't seek to make promises that we know from our own collective experiences we can't keep, but still remains really relentlessly optimistic, but also realistic of what can be achieved and the navigation of what will be tricky moments during the process. Another practical technique is to really break down strategy that is often set at a very senior leadership level into actionable frameworks for the team. And what I mean by that is to really simplify that strategic intention into key outcomes, deliverables, and break down things that can feel really complex to people, especially if it's their first time operating in this space, into consumable bite-sized pieces. Visual tools. I mean, I'm a real visual person. I think many of us are, and they can be really helpful to do that, because often strategies are lots of words, whereas visual tools such as work breakdown structures, mind maps, flow charts, road maps, all of those things can really help people grasp the interdependencies and consequences of every element of the delivery and the difference that they're making as a whole. Ultimately, for me as leaders, I think it's important that we just continue to empathise with our teams in our communications, because much of what they will experience is often really new territory, and it's our job to tailor that communication anchored to the vision, to the needs of our teams, that really will help them and equip them to successfully navigate that delivery that's going to come. Matt, can I hand over to you to gain your perspective on this, please?
I think Matt's frozen.
Yes.
Oh.
Hello?
Hello,
Hey,
Matt, we can hear you now.
Sorry, yeah, just saying I'm not as miserable as my photo suggests on my bio, but nice to see you all. Really good points, Andrea. And I think in terms of transition 15 and the value we bring is we understand why is this. What do we the how sometimes gets a bit left, and we massively believe in attitude and behavior.
Matt, I'm afraid we are losing you at the moment. You're
Through
cutting
transformation. Right.
Do you want to try again, Matt? See if we can hear you properly. I'm afraid we lost most of what you said then. No, it's not just me, is it?
Matt, perhaps it'd be worth coming off the video. I think maybe technology, the network's letting us down. Maybe come off the video and just try voice.
Okay, right. While we're waiting for Matt to do that, I suppose, so obviously we've just gone through communication. We'll wait for Matt to come back to us. It's just come off video now. Let's see if that makes a difference. Can you hear us, Matt?
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you now. So was there anything else that you wanted to touch on communication before we move on to the next subject type?
Yeah, I think the concept in rugby is on the pitch in a transformation using the dynamics of a rugby match. You have three zones in rugby terms. You have commentators, who are there, pundits, analysts, former players, sometimes coaches. What do they do? Kind of offer tactical insights, critique decisions and opinions, but their impact is to provide perspective and knowledge, but they don't influence the game. Insightful, but not game-changing. And then you have your supporters in the stands. Supporters, critiques, maybe sometimes disengaged team members. What do? They cheer, they boo, they celebrate, or they sometimes complain. But the impact can boost morale or create pressure, but they don't also shape performance. Emotional energy, but no direct control. Whereas when you're on the pitch, your players, your captains, your coaches, in rugby, often decision makers that need to actually drive the game forward, the transformation forward. What do? Execute strategy, adapt in real time, communicate and collaborate. The impact, they're directly responsible for performance, outcomes, and team success. Decision makers and performance drivers. But rugby as a team, like a transformational project, is built on trust. Trust, aligned and actively contributing to the game, not just watching or commentating. And so the problem is when people who should be on the pitch go into the stands or go into commentary, and you can look at this as a kind of core thing as well, and different members, different space, but it's the ability to, when leaders or team members operate from the stands or commentary, decisions slow down, ownership weakens, and performance suffers.
Thanks, Matt. So that's really useful insight, particularly like trying to bring it back to a real life example here of going through in terms of bringing it down to being on the pitch. And obviously we showed the visual around that. That sort of jumped onto the next question we were going to bring up, which was around how leaders can inspire confidence, which is exactly what you've just gone through. How leaders can inspire confidence and trust when transformation feels uncertain and uncomfortable. We've also put on here, you'll see on the visual in front of us now, some of the other areas that other areas to be thinking about. And as Matt's talked about and brought that to sort of like a real life example of how we bring all this together. But I will just open it up to the panel in case there's anything else Andrea or Graham wanted to mention when we are thinking about how we inspire confidence and trust when we're thinking, when we have got people that are feeling uncertain and uncomfortable as they go through the journey.
Yes, Sarah. I mean, I can definitely lean into that conversation. So thank you for the opportunity. For me, when I look at this visual, the modeling of the behaviors, I'm a real believer that you need to model the behaviors you want to see. And as leadership, particularly during transformations, we are responsible for setting the tone of that transformation. And every day, our opportunity to make an impact to the people's, how they feel about their day, is a really serious responsibility that we should all, first of all, recognise. And I think particularly as leaders, and sometimes particularly female leaders, don't realise the impact that they have because we don't necessarily understand the importance that we are on a day-to-day basis. So that real modelling through vulnerability, not trying to gaslight our people that everything's okay if there's some uncertainty. I think there's real authenticity and importance of being honest with people without burdening them with too much worries. Our job is essentially there to protect our people, empower them and enable them, and then maybe do the worrying in the background, but still modelling and showing up in a way that they can be proud of and that they can utilise and equip them in their day-to-day. So, I really like these 6 elements of inspiring confidence, inspiring trust, and in day-to-day, trust is hard fought for and very easily broken. So it's recognizing that all of these things working in harmony, to be trusted, you need to prove yourself trustworthy. And I think it's really helpful if organisations and leaders really ask themselves that uncomfortable but important question: am I trustworthy, and do my words match my actions? So thank you for the invitation to answer that.
If I can just add one thing to that, Andrew, as well, it's something I see a lot within Searchlight when we're with clients as well. I think as leaders, it's on us to shield the teams from some of the, how do I put this delicately? I'll just be very direct, higher level politics that can go on within organisations. They don't need that bother. They need to stay focused. If they're starting to be derailed by politics and other things that are going on, it takes the focus away from what they're doing and some of the joy. It's our role to be the resistor. And when I say resistor, I mean to be the barrier between that higher level politicking, if you like, and anything else that might be going on the team. And I think if you do that, what I've seen over time is the team trust you, that you've got their back, if you like, and that engenders trust as well and a good team spirit.
Yeah. Just to summarise that before we move on to the next one, I think what we're trying to say through here as well, the message is coming out, it's not just about, in order to build high-performing, successful teams, you've got to give them the environment and the safe environment that gives them the parameters to be able to deliver in a way that we need them to be successful. It's all of it that comes together.
Very much so.
Okay, right then, let's move on to the next topic, so great communication through transformation. So I think what we're going to touch on here is, what does good look like, and sometimes what does bad look like? So let's focus on, in order to get good communication, some of the examples of where some of the organisations go wrong and what we can do around it in order to make it more successful. I'm going to open this conversation back up to Matt, if that's okay.
So great leaders scenario plan. So they scenario plan for tomorrow, but delivered today. And behavior is so important. And actually, behavior data that we get with our maybe adapting or modifying, and maybe under strain at different times, but the ability to understand how, with clear purpose and goals, strong communication, building that psychological safety, open, honest, and respectful dialogue, that kind of active listening, constructive feedback, diverse skills. We massively believe in high performance is in diversity, but it's also quite paradoxical and there's a contradiction. So it's a respect of understanding how to get the best for and from each other through this. Goes back to relational trust, but the behaviors and using data around behavioral science, or if you want to call it, is so important to set the team up for success. So good leaders scenario plan, they understand their team because they're trying to get things delivered from their team. So the inspiration and confidence to know that training and from a rugby context, practice, 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 practice. How are we working? Our ways of working, our team dynamic. How are we actually developing trust and alignment? Or are we just, waiting for 6 months for someone to make a decision? It's got to be pace. It's got to be. I mean, that's the key thing.
Just lost you a little bit there at the end, Matt. But so just leading on from what that insight that we've had from Matt, you'll see on the slide here as well that we talk about, and there's lots of different things out there in terms of different type of behavioural profiling tools and stuff that that people can use. And it's something that we in RM have used more recently over the last 12 months, particularly when it comes to sitting down and looking at the skill set and the behaviours within the team and getting the best out of people. So CME profiling is something that we focused off in RM, and we've got some really good benefits out of that, and really got some valuable insights in understanding people's behaviours, looking at round how people work differently, so therefore tailoring not only communication, well, mainly communications, but other aspects to be able to meet that profile and see and be able to respond to how people best behave with the information that's being given in front of them to be able to get the best out of people. As we said, there's lots of different behavioural profiling that's out there, but we've used CME profiling, and if nothing more, particularly when you're getting into the start of a transformation journey and you're bringing new teams and new individuals together, just having the conversation around how people want to behave and how we get the best out of them, it helps humanize the process as well. It's a really good exercise to go through, particularly when you've got bringing two different organizations together. Again, going back to what I mentioned before around if you're partnering with different organizations, going through this type of exercise really helps humanize the process and understands people behaviors and how to get the best out of people by tailoring your communication and tailoring your information in the best way so that it lands well with senior stakeholders. So again, as we mentioned at the beginning of the session, we can go into that in more detail and give some tips about how to do this in a more detailed workshop. But yeah, that's just what we wanted to cover on there. So let's move forward on to the next question. How can organisations establish a capable and empowered team? So I'm going to hand straight over to Andrea to kick us off.
Thank you so much, Sarah. This visual really resonates with me, and I hope it does with others, because it ultimately places emphasis on the capabilities of our people to be the core pillars and foundations for great delivery and purposeful outcomes. I think when you sort of look at some of the simple words within these pillars, the first one and really vital exercise for any organisation is to conduct and understand the capabilities of your existing teams, to know that then they can be empowered in a meaningful way. Digital transformation does demand different capabilities to those that may already exist within your own current operating model. Therefore, I think it's first important to put the effort in up front to define what that future operating model is going to be, and then conduct a capability assessment that really can map that future state and need to what you've already got, to make sure really that you are asking the right things of the right people. You cannot have an empowered team who aren't capable and have not been brought on that journey in their competencies, skills and capabilities. Now, organisations, whoever they are, can often make the mistake that this automatically means you need to bring in new resources to get that job done well. And, to be fair, in some cases, that might be necessary just based upon the technology and digital maturity of the organisation. However, to establish a high-performing team, that very much rests on identifying what are already latent strengths within your existing roles, your functions and individuals, and harnessing the transferable skills to the greatest effect. Not only is that a really huge motivating factor for a team to succeed, to engender buy-in and commitment, but it also ensures that really important and often, undocumented tacit knowledge that existing teams and colleagues hold is retained and then can be put to best use in the transformation. Ultimately, where a skills gap is identified, it kind of leads quite nicely on to those remaining pillars, which are centered around bridging those gaps with coaching and partnering, and really, in essence, fostering a real learning culture within the organisation. That should include techniques such as really investing in peer-to-peer learning, encourage knowledge sharing across multidisciplinary teams who may have never worked together before, but they can share their individual experiences that will ultimately, enrich the depth and breadth of that collective delivery force. However we choose to construct a team, the real enabler here, I think, is when the focus for that team development is on problem solving. During the life cycle of digital transformation and change, problems will occur, and we have to be honest and prepared for that inevitable fact. And although it's impossible to know when they may appear and the nature of them, like many things in our day-to-day, the problem is never actually the barrier to progress. It's our individual and collective response to that problem that ultimately decides on the outcome. Often I think having a go-to toolkit is really helpful, and the example of which I'm hoping Matt will be able to take us through shortly, will provide people with a clear and practical route to get into a resolution, and the steps and the methodology to get into a resolution when, at a time when a problem's encountered, emotions do seek to have the loudest voice. So having something that you can fall back on that is practical and usable is really important when tensions can often rise. For me, it's also often through the stormy waters, which comes back to that final pillar of problem management and issue management, that gives us the greatest opportunity to recognise and reward solution-based thinking, and that where that innovation can be best exploited. Celebrating, not just the outcome of successes, but the learning, the collaboration, and the resilience that was enabled along the way. Matt, maybe you can take us through the FPSA model that we sort of allude to here.
Yes.
As one such technique. Thank you.
And I really apologise about my network. I think it's having a struggle. So we talked about the how, the why, the what, but the focus on how. We talked about on the pitch, transformation programs. Problem solving is quite a big thing. And innovation. So the articulation of the problem statement at times gets lost. So this model really just, if you think about a situation, a project, a theme, go to the facts. They're real, they're data-led, and that gives more context on what we're actually trying to achieve. The width of the focus is really important in articulating the problem statement. Then you can create ideas, green light thinking, and then you can create joint solutions or part solutions or whole solutions, and then the acceptance is stakeholders. So this tool just works in the how of how do you actually get teams problem solving effectively. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges in change. The motivation for change is how do you get teams together quickly to accelerate their learning, behaviors, data insight, predictability, multiple entities coming together to build resilience or focus in where they need to innovate or problem solve.
Great, thanks, Matt. Okay, let's carry on with the discussion then. Now we've covered that subject, and let's think about, so it's important, we've described as we've gone through the conversation today, focusing really on how we go about building and the right building blocks to get to high performing teams. But once the initial excitement fades, there is an important point here. How do we keep people on the journey with us? How do we keep people engaged in the transformation so that as we go through those latter stages, but not always through the latter stages, as we can see it, transformation can take time. Effective transformation will be done over a very long period of time, and it will go through peaks and flows, particularly through the different work packages and the way that it's set up. So it will go through stages where people are engaged and people aren't so engaged. So what we wanted to talk about here is, how do we keep people engaged through it? When that excitement fades, how do we keep people on the journey on it? And importantly then, how does what we're building through this transformational change get embedded into the culture, so it isn't just seen as a once and done project? This is a whole change in the way that things, the way that processes, technology and people adapt into a business. So keen to get people's insight here onto how do we make it part of the culture? How do you handle when that excitement fades? So let's kick off with Graham, if that's okay, Graham.
Yeah, sure. It's really interesting, isn't it? When you and I've done dozens and dozens of these now over my career. When you kick off one of these big digital transformation or business transformation programs, it's a fanfare. All right, everybody's there. All the partners are there. The senior execs are there. The senior leadership are there. And they all of the spiel comes out, all of the motivational spiel. And then what tends to happen is it ramps down really quickly and you don't see them till another milestone. And if you just talking around this a moment, if you look at the main reasons these big initiatives fail, the main recurring reason, this isn't me, this is from institutes that do the analysis, the single biggest reason these things fail is a lack of active and visible sponsorship. So that initial hype, it has to be maintained to a degree. You need to be there to keep the team on point, remind them why they're doing it, remind them why in the organization it is really important for them to deliver the outcomes that we promised when we set off. And of course, it encourages the team. So sustained engagement, it's about feeling part of the journey, being recognized for what you're doing. And that comes from top-down leadership. Your people you work with day to day and colleagues can pat you on the back. But we all like to be recognized by the people that we report to. So that ability for us as leaders to make people feel they're coming along the journey and every day is worthwhile is really, really important. And as managers and leaders on the call, get your sponsors involved constantly through the program. Not in every meeting every day. Clearly, they're very busy people. They're trying to run a business, but not every 6 months. Yeah, there's a nice balance that you need to strike. Call them into the occasional program or project town hall meeting to get them to reinforce why it's still important, why they haven't forgotten you guys that are at the coalface. I can't emphasize that enough. For me, that's super important. In terms of how we weave it into what we do every day, it's all about process. It kind of links back to the process and governance we touched on earlier, but build the change mantra into your stand-ups, into your meetings, into everything you do all the time. And when people set off with their roles and responsibilities, which you've now very clearly communicated to the team, give people the opportunity to grow as well. Don't just silo them and pigeonhole them into one box for the entire time. Give them opportunities. You don't necessarily need to promote them, but there are opportunities within the initiative that make people feel valued, like you're being given something extra, and the recognition that comes with it. And it makes people feel valued and wanted. And that's worked, at least for me anyway, that's worked very well in particularly in some prickly spots where we've had challenging environments. I've been able to speak to members of the team that probably when I set out, I didn't actually recognize their abilities, but you learn as a manager, as a leader. And you can push them, almost promote them into roles that make them feel valued. And that is infectious. Other people see it, other people witness it and go, I want a bit of that as well. And they get in behind it. And then I suppose really it's about celebrating success. I can't emphasize that enough. I know I've probably talked about it 2 or 3 times already, but celebrate success. As leaders, it's really, really important that we do so. And ultimately, all of this that we've talked about comes down to the team working as one towards a common goal of very well understood outcomes that we want to get to. And that probably leads nicely, at least I hope it leads nicely, Matt, into the concept of teamship.
Yeah. I'd just give a 60-second one of the best coaches I've had is Sir Clive Woodward, and teamship and discipline and best practice are so important. It's almost creating habits that become BAU. So that ability to collaborate, collective responsibility, and remember, go back to the co-design. Let's co-design this together. What are the habits that are going to make us world class? So, but all team members have to be uniquely involved in it, and they've got skills, knowledge, attitude, and behavior, a skill set and a mindset to achieve those objectives. So sustainability with that charter is massively important. If you're going through any transformation, build a charter and then hold each other accountable to it.
Great, thanks, Matt. And that's absolutely something that we do here with it in RM, and on the larger digital transformation programs that we're running into some of our running with some of our customers. That's been something that we've done from the very beginning. We have sat down and we have, from a program delivery point of view, we have put in place program charters that sort of described how we want to engage together and allowed people to have the opportunity to be able to feed in a safe environment of how they're going to work through that. But it's taken it to the next level of setting the behaviours that we want to be able to see. You know, as we go through any type of change, there will be difficult conversations to be had. But it's about putting down in writing into a charter, as we speak about, what those behaviours should look like, how we upfront deal with the challenges that we're going to be that we know are going to come through the process, that enables us then to keep everybody thinking on the right route of still being a high performing and successful team, because they've got the guardrails and because they've got the processes around them where they know how they feed into that and how they raise any types of risks, issues, concerns in a safe environment, but also importantly to know how they're going to get the right outcome from it. So just leading on from what Matt said then, I think it is vitally important that we do sit down when we're starting on this journey around how we put that charter in, so people know how to engage with people, and we sort of touch on that behaviours of what's acceptable and how we want to work together through this to all achieve a common goal. That was the last of the questions that we were going to go through. I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen now. That was the last of the questions we were going to go through on the discussion today. So I will open it up now just to the rest of the panelists to see if anybody's got any last comments that they want to, or any closing remarks that they want to, and then I'll have a quick look to see if we've had any questions come through. Andrea?
No, I mean, you know, having met colleagues on this call previously and in preparation for this webinar, I just want to say a huge thank you for, you know, having us all together. It's really powerful when people, you know, bring together their collective experiences and seek to share and enable other you know, colleagues and others in other organizations to do likewise. I think it was Matt that said to me on a previous call, you know, key communications and empowerment is around remembering you've got one mouth and two ears. And that really did resonate with me, you know, that little vignette of that communication is more about how you receive and consume than is what you say. So we've talked a lot, but I hope that in the last 45, 50 minutes, that actually there's been plenty that's been heard and that is useful and, you know, practical for the people to be able to call upon. I'll never forget one mouth, two ears, and I'm very grateful for that. So thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Andrea. Graham?
I think I've said it through the course of it, and I also echo what Andrew just said. I think it's a cracking piece of wisdom, isn't it? One mouth, two ears. I think, and I'm guilty of it myself. I think far too often you talk and don't listen and hear what's being said. So yeah. I echo that.
And I just want to take the opportunity to thank Matt, who's joined us today. Apology, you know, so sorry you've had some technical difficulty, but
it's live TV, Sarah. We should always expect the unexpected.
I'm sorry. Can you imagine So yeah, I'm really, I apologize. I
No.
don't know. It goes down, but typically it went down now.
But look, we've been able to get through the salient points, and we've really valued your insight and bringing a different perspective to this discussion today. But again, opening the floor to you, Matt, in case there's anything else that you wanted to add.
No, I think we've talked about the why, the what, you know, why do we exist in a transformation? What are we trying to achieve, the business case? But remember the how. How are we actually going to create a team dynamic and way of working at all levels? And that's individual, team, and organization, where everyone's on the pitch, playing their role and their responsibility in a kind of tight and loose environment. We can predict behavior and accelerate the learning of each other through the behavior preference model. Let's problem solve well, and let's create some best practice that we all are accountable to. And I'm a firm believer that in any form of development, you can't tell if you tell talent what to do, it can tend to rebel. Whereas actually, if you allow individuals and teams and organizations through a transformation to understand themselves, you've got a much better chance of them owning the solution through effective problem solving. So.
No, thank you. And so firstly, thank you to all the panelists today, and also for everybody that's listened live on the session today and engaged, and anybody that's going to be listening back. As we said, we've got a series of 3 different webinars, and I really appreciate people taking the time to listen today, because we've gone from how you start your digital transformation journey, and rather than jumping straight into how you deliver it, we thought it was really vitally important to really take the time to think about how you build, and give some hints and tips in here about how we as leaders go into building high performance teams, because there's no point jumping to the delivery unless you set the behaviours and the environments, unless you focus on those to ensure that we are delivering high performance teams, to ensure that we get the effective delivery. So that's the approach that we've taken throughout this conversation today, and when it came to thinking about the key areas that we wanted to talk about when it comes to designing a digital transformation. So thank you for listening to us today. Thank you for getting involved. Thank you to all of our panelists. As I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, as joining us today, everybody is welcome to get in touch. We are happy to engage in a more specific workshop with people that are interested in starting their digital transformation, to go into a more detailed discussion on how we could potentially help. Just reach out afterwards if you're interested in signing up for that workshop. And we look forward to seeing you again on the next webinar, which will be coming out in a couple of months' time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, everyone, for attending.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.